Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's ClaritySoft webinar. Today is Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. I'm Susan Arnold, Implementation Specialist here at ClaritySoft, and our topic for today is a guide for system administrators. We will be concentrating on the System Settings menu in ClaritySoft. For those of you that happen to be admin users in ClaritySoft, this will help you maybe clarify some questions you might have, give you some ideas to add to your database, and things like that. If you are not an admin user in the system, you won't be able to do these things, but you certainly can get some ideas and take them back to the person who is an admin user in your system. So we will be, first of all, just do a quick overview of the settings menu, the topics to explain what each one does. And then we'll go down in more detail looking at the different sections of the settings menu, the system settings, your users and access section, customization, where you set up your custom fields for each of the modules. And then lastly, the My Settings. The My Settings is where each user has control and can go and set up certain things that user has control over. Everything else is under the control of the admin person. And then there's some additional settings that we have that we'll talk over quickly. When you're setting up your database, you're making lots of decisions because you're deciding, first of all, what's the flow of data through our database? Do we want to use the leads module? Don't we want to use the leads module? Do we want to use opportunities, quotes, and sales? Do we not need to use all of those because we do some of that elsewhere? And so you're trying to think through your basically your flow of data. And then along with that is deciding upon, well, what custom data fields do we need? Do we need to know industry type? Do we need a status field to know whether this is a customer or a prospect or a vendor or a supplier or whatever? Do we need to know a territory? Do we need to know, you can start to think all these different things. And a lot of times you might be coming from another CRM. So you can go back to that CRM and look at the custom fields you have there. And then we recreate them in ClaritySoft for import purposes. You might be tracking data in spreadsheets. So you want to look at your spreadsheets and what columns you have that are tracking different pieces of information. So there's a lot of just sitting down and thinking through how you want your database to be set up, and what custom fields you would like in the system. And then you have at it with going in and starting to build it, okay? And as you're working, before you release this out to your whole team, you can do testing, put in some sample data, log in as different users to see that the settings that you've set up for them work the way you expected them to work. And then when you finally have, reached a point where you think everything's good, then you release it out to your team and you go live. So it is a process that you get to follow. And sometimes when you're doing 17 other things in your job position, it becomes a little bit hard to do. But if you are in our quick start program with one of our implementation people, then we help guide you and help support you through that process. Okay, so let me go to my database here. So for those of you, I think most of you are pretty much started with ClaritySoft. But when you first log into ClaritySoft, it's pretty empty. You basically have two records in there for demo account 1 and 2, and you have basic fields of name, address, phone number for the company and everything else. So it's pretty plain vanilla. And yet you could work with it as it is, but usually you want to customize it to fit your particular business. And I think that is one of the premier functionalities or features of ClaritySoft, is that you can customize it to fit your business. You are not stuck with what we've decided you should have. you get to add those fields. And once you learn the process, it's actually quite intuitive and quite easy to do. And the other best thing about it is you can make modifications at any time, even after you've added data to the database. You can go in and make changes. So what we're planning to do today is just really go through those system settings and get you familiar with them, and hopefully give you some ideas as well. So system settings, you'll be living in this at the beginning and doing a lot of logging in and logging out of your database, but you come up here to the upper right and click on this little gear shaped button. That's your settings button, and it will take you to the settings menu. And I'm going to collapse this for a second. So over here on the left, we have our menu. And as I mentioned, we have system settings, which are global to the entire system. Users and access, which is where you're going to enter your users that are going to use the system, give them login credentials. And then access is what data access do they have? What records can they see when they go into the database? Can they see all records? Can they see records where they are the owner of the record? Can they see combinations where they can see their own records plus another person's records? All kinds of things there. Also, what rights do they have in the database? Can they, add new records? Can they edit records? Can they delete records? So we'll talk about that under users and access. Customization is where you go to customize the different modules. This is where you add your custom fields for each module, okay? And set up any preferences for those modules. We will probably not touch too much on the rest of these. Products and pricing. This is where you can add a price book of your products into ClaritySoft. Action plans, this has to do with activities. And then workflow automation, these two kind of go together, and we've done webinars on these that you can see. Web forms, one thing to know here, if you're not aware of it, you can create a web form on your website, and then you are able to link it to the leads module to bring in new leads, or you can link it to the support module to bring in people that are requesting help with support. So that's available. And then the last one here, integrations. These are the different things that ClaritySoft does integrate with. Okay, so that's built into the system already. We won't be touching on these down here. So up to system settings. I'm going to start there and go through these because these all have to do with the whole system and all users. This is specific to each user, so we'll come back to that. So the first thing, under system settings, you have different subtopics here. And the first one is general. And the way this is structured, your menu is on the left. And when you click on an option on the left side, then on the right side are the actual settings that you make. Okay. So here, my general settings, first thing I'm going to do is enter my company name. This will be blank when you go in for the first time. So you would just simply click in here and type your company name, whatever it is. I'm just calling it the best coffee ever. So just type it. It's simply a text field. Then you can set your time zone for where, now this is for your corporate location, okay? Because I know a lot of people are scattered all over the place, and the corporate office is in one time zone and you're elsewhere. So this would be your corporate location. And you'll notice here, Eastern time is in here, but there's no drop down to pick any other time zone. What you do, we have a little secret trick. You select the text and then you simply start typing the name of the time zone, and it goes and searches for all of them. All the time zones around the entire world are in this list. We just didn't make it a drop down or you'd be scrolling through it forever. And then you simply click on the time zone when you see it. Okay. So you just type till you get it. select it. So that's the trick for time zone, and that's the way it works in the user record when we get there. Date format, it will default to the one that's the most standard in the US, but you can change it to the year or the date. And this again is a global setting, so this will be the default for the whole database, but each individual user, again, depending upon their location, may want to change it to one of the other two when they're looking at their own data in the database. So you set this. Financial year, what month does your fiscal year start? And this is important to set correctly, because then it determines when you do filters in the database for sales or opportunities and you want to see the first quarter sales. Well, if your fiscal year doesn't start, say, until July, first quarter for you would be July, August, September. And so you need to set it correctly so those filters work correctly to give you the correct information. So that's important. Currency symbol, you type in your currency symbol. Allow global search. People, the first question is, what the heck is global search? Well, global search in the database allows you to go to the leads module, the accounts, or the contacts module, select global search under the spyglass button, and then you click in a couple checkboxes to say, I want you to search in leads, in accounts, and contacts all at the same time. And then you can type in either a person's name or a company name, and it will search across all the modules and find matching records. And then it will tell you where it is. Is it in leads? Is it in contacts? Is it in accounts? And it will also tell you who the owner of the record is. So this is nice from, even if you can see all records in the database, it's nice to be able to search first to see if, you're in leads and you don't know if it's already an account. So you want to check and see, and then you can search from leads into the accounts module. So it makes it nice. The other advantage to using this is if you have your users set to individual access where they can see only their own records, that means they can't see, maybe, I don't know, a third or fourth or fifth of the records in the database. So they don't know if they have a new lead or a new account or somebody to put into the database because they can't see it. So the global search allows them to search all records and pull up a matching record that maybe belongs to another user. So then they know, oh, that's already in here. It belongs to so-and-so. I need to talk to him or her. Okay. So that's the purpose of the global search. By default, this will be set to off. I would recommend that you set it to yes, so rather than no. Okay. And then this is brand new as of last week. In the country field, again, there are lots of countries around the world. Many of you work with other countries, and so the country field has always been just type in any text. We just changed this where you can choose and create a drop down, and it will work much the same way as the time zone does. You simply will click in the field and start typing the name of the company or the country, and then it will pull it up a matching. Okay, so you're able to set this to whichever way you want, the free form text or the drop down. If you've already entered text into country fields and you change it to drop down, it's not going to wipe out your data. It will leave the data there. So I haven't tried this yet, so I'm going to change it. All right. Then password rules. The default rule in ClaritySoft is pretty simple. The only requirement is your password needs to be 5 characters. No other requirements. Okay. If you want to make your passwords a little more secure, then you can first of all come here and say, well, how many characters? I want 11 characters minimum. and I want it to include symbols, numbers, whatever you want. You can choose all of these. So that means if a person goes to change their password, they will have to match these rules that you've just set. Okay. Will have to be 11 characters, and it will tell them you must do this. Okay. Much like when you sign into your bank or any other places where they have stronger password rules. So I'm going to keep mine simple because I don't want to have to do this when I change passwords all the time. But that you can set, okay? And then this two-factor authentication, this is for logging in purposes where you have to get a text every time with a code. I don't recommend turning that on, especially when you're doing setup. You'll drive yourself nuts. So once you make your changes, then click apply to save it. And it will take, so it's telling you what it does, okay? It's saying it might delete some values, but I think they said it wouldn't. So I don't have any in there, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's your general settings. System notifications. These are the email addresses that notifications from within ClaritySoft are sent out through. You do not need to change these. These are set here. The only thing you might need to do is let your network IT people know that they should whitelist these email addresses so they don't get caught in your network somewhere and don't go out. So that's the only thing really you need to do. If they want to set up their own notification emails, they can, but you don't really need to touch this at all, other than to make sure they're whitelisted if you're on a network. All right, module names. One of the questions people ask us many times, can we change the names of the modules? They want to change it to something else. Yes, you can do that. However, when you change the name of a module, for example, if you wanted to change accounts to companies, okay, that's fine. It will display in the navigation panel as companies. It will display at the top of the module as companies. But when you get down into the actual record and you open an account record, it's not going to say company name, it's going to say account name. At the top of a column in list view, it's going to say account, not company. So you can try it because you can always change it back. I just find, and most of the people that I've had change the module names find it confusing, and it's easier to just leave it as is until we reach a point where it changes throughout the database, because it's going to be, all your reports are still going to say account, everything's going to say account. So people are looking at company and then they find account everywhere else. So like I said, give it a try, see if it works, and then change it back if you feel it's not working for you. Logo, you may add your company logo that will display at the top of the navigation panel. So what you can do is go choose your logo file. We recommend this size. Also, we recommend that the file, if at all possible, can be in a vector format like SVG, because when you resize it, it won't get blurry or fuzzy or anything like that. A vector file automatically resizes without losing its resolution and getting blurry. But when you choose the file, a screen will pop up and you'll have this little rectangle about this big from here to here, actually about the size of this button, that you need to get your logo into. And you resize it down into that rectangle, and then you click the crop button and it will then put it at the top of your navigation panel. The other thing you can add to the logo is if you want to, when you click on it, it jumps to your web page. You can add the URL here and that will be added to the logo. So if you want to put it in, a lot of people do. It kind of depends too on the shape of your logo. If your logo is more vertical, then it's hard to squash it into this horizontal shape. So it just depends. but that is there for you to do. Okay. Then the other thing in here, when you get into the contacts module, you basically have 5 parts to your contact name. You can have a prefix, which would be Mr., Ms., Mrs., Doctor, whatever, first name, middle name or initial, last name, and then a suffix. So by default, you will not have any prefixes here when you go here. If you want to use prefixes, then you can come here and go to add and add whatever prefix you want. And I don't remember what I had here. So I'll just type in just anything. I'll just type in that and you save it. So it will get added as a prefix. Okay. If you want to delete one, then you can delete it here. You can change the order as well. So that's prefixes. Some people use them, some people don't. Okay. It's optional. Same with suffixes. These can be junior, senior, the third, the fourth, whatever, or they can be professional suffixes. Especially in the medical area or the engineering area, a lot of people have suffixes that are, they're professional suffixes that you want to add to their name. One comment on the suffixes is this is a single select drop down. So if you have a person that has multiple, degrees at the end of their name, you would have to create a suffix, that's, I don't know, I'm just going to make up a name, F, say FAR, and then it would have to be comma, something like that. You would have to make that combination as a suffix so you could pick it. That could get a little tricky depending on all the people you work with, because they can have, any kind of combination, but it can be done. So I just want to tell you that before you go in there and add them all and then say, oh, well, I can only pick one. Yes, you can only pick one. So you know that ahead of time. All right. Then lead sources. This is in all of the modules. It's system wide, which is why it's under system settings. And you are able to add whatever lead sources. How do your people come to you? So there are a few in there when you first start. You can go and add any other ones that work for you. Again, I don't remember because I'm not paying attention. I don't have referral in here, so maybe I want to add referral. Okay, and I just type what I want, save it, it gets added to the list. Then if you wanted referral up the list higher, you can click here and hit the up arrow until it's where you want it, or you can click on the row action button here and move up or move down. Okay. Another one that's here is disable. You'll see enabled over here. A lot of people ask, well, what does that mean? Because you can disable options in a list like this. You can disable custom fields and other things in the database. What that means is if I disable referral, you'll see the check mark goes away. I can also click in the circle. It means that any record that's in the database that has referral as the lead source will remain intact. It will not be changed. But when you click on the drop-down list for lead sources, referral will no longer be in the list. And that's the way you want it. If you have a lead source, maybe you had some organization you're no longer a member of or whatever, then you can disable that lead source. And if you had 50 records in there that came from there, it won't mess them up. You don't want to delete them, especially if you've used it somewhere. Okay, now I have personal referral here. So I am going to get rid of this one, which you can see I can delete, but I don't recommend deleting it if you've used it in the database. Just disable it and it will be fine. okay? So it just removes it from the list, so you can't use it anymore because you can't see it, but it is in the database, it remains intact. So those are your system settings, just general settings throughout the entire database that you want to go through and set up and make sure, you know, everything's good there. Then your next step is to get your users in the system, okay? Because especially if, you know, you're the main user, because you're going to be the admin person, but maybe you're working with a couple other people to do your setup, and you want to give them a login so they can go in and, you know, work with you on different things in the system. The number of users you can add will depend upon the number of licenses that you have purchased. And over here, there is a drop down that will show you all the users. So right now I have 10 active users, okay? I have 0 inactive users. And if you try to add, if I was set to 10 users and I tried to add an 11th user, the kind of frustrating thing is I would type in all the users' information, and when I click save, it would then tell me, oh, you can't add another user. So just make sure, you know, I have had that issue come up. So this will tell you, and if you deactivate someone, then it will show you over here that you have, you know, 9 active users and 1 inactive user. So that means you have an extra license that you now have available to you if someone leaves or whatever, okay? So always check over there to see what you have. And then you have your users, and you'll add your user first and last name, and then you'll give each user a login name. Let me go and add a new user. So you're entering their first name and their last name. Oh, let's see. I'm going to pick on Mike. He's our new implementation specialist. Okay. Phone number, title and phone number are not required, but nice to have information wise. And I don't know what your phone number is, Mike, so I'm not going to worry about it. But your email address, you definitely want in here, because those system notifications that we were looking at, they use the email address for the user. So, well, okay, so you want to put the person's email address in. Then the username, what you can do anything here. What I usually recommend to people is use just the first part of the email address. So you could do, or you could use first initial, last name, or you could use first name, last initial. Again, something that the person is used to typing. You won't use the full email address because it doesn't like the @ sign and that kind of stuff. So if I just did Mike, I could do that, or I could do Mike M. Okay. And so that's there. Now, this is another choice that you have when you're adding a new user. You don't need to enter a password at this point. And after you've saved the record, you can then send the user an email that will give them a link to create their own password. I have had those emails somehow, you know, not make it, or they land in the junk folder. So I don't know, to make it a little bit easier, I just simply put in the person's login name, their username, as their password. And then I just send it to them and say, your login name is this, your password is this, and the database name is this, and then you're done. So it's up to you whether you send, and then they can go in and change their own password when they first log in. So it's up to you which way you want to do it. It just kind of depends on your system. Okay, now reports to, this is the next question everyone is. What does this mean? This, you don't need to do anything if you are not using the manager profile, which I will explain in about 5 minutes, okay? If you're using the manager profile and Mike reports to a specific person as manager, then you would choose which person is the manager. Okay, so that should tell you that in the sequence of adding users, add your manager people first. Now, this doesn't mean, that they're just a sales manager title in the company or something like that. This is a person, it's the structure in the database, how you see data, which I will explain. So I'm not going to have Mike report to anybody at this point. He is going to have a profile of all. That means he can see all the records of the database. It does not matter who the owner is, okay? In ClaritySoft, the owner field determines your access when you get into different access profiles, okay? So we have an all profile. We have an individual profile, which means if Mike logged into the database, he would see only those records where he is the owner of the record. Okay, he cannot see anybody else's. Manager profile is if Mike is the manager, then other people can be set to report to Mike. They can see, or he can see his own records, plus he can see all the people who report to him underneath him. But the people underneath him cannot see upward to see his records. That's what that profile means, okay? So it's not used a whole lot because most of the time people are either all, they can see everything, or they're individual, and then individual can be expanded outward into a group or something like that, okay? Team, we don't use this anymore. It came from the offline version, so don't use it, okay? And then terminated, you would set a person to terminated if they're leaving the company. You would come in and change their profile to terminated. And then at the bottom of here, you'll see a deactivate. So terminated will set their profile or their access so they no longer can log into the system. Okay, and maybe you have a user that doesn't want to use ClaritySoft anymore, but they're not leaving the company. So you can terminate them in here, and they then can no longer log into ClaritySoft. But the other step that you would also need to do is down at the bottom, there's a deactivate. When you deactivate them, then that frees up the license that they're using so that you now have a license free for a new person. Okay, so there's kind of 2 steps there with that. All right, so we're going to set him to an all profile, time zone. See, it says enter time zone, and you get this giant list, but you can't scroll the whole list. See, it only goes down so far. So you're going to start typing whatever time zone Mike happens to be in. So for those of you, some of you have people in the Eastern zone, they have Pacific, you have your folks all over the place. So you enter the time zone where that person is. Okay. Then user types. I've set up a couple of user types. They're defined over here. So again, if you're going to use them, you probably want to set them up first, but they can be something like a territory. I have inside sales, outside sales. They can be a region, something like that. What this feeds into would be filters. where you would say, I want to see all of the sales records for those people in region A or territory Northeast or whatever. So it's for filtering and reporting purposes. Again, not a whole lot of people use this unless they have a large sales team, and then they go in and they'll set these up. Groups, again, you can define them over here and then they show up. So you would want to define your groups before you start adding your people. They can be defined after you add your people. It doesn't matter. You just have to come back in and set them. So for example, if I restricted Mike to be an individual, but I make him a member of the Northeast region, whoever else is in that group, he would be able to see the records for any other member of the Northeast region group. And so I make him a member and I give him visibility into that group. Okay. Down here, you can give visibility to individual users. So maybe Mike isn't a member of a group, but I want him to be able to see George's records and Steve's records. So I can pick individual users that he can see their records plus his own. So you can see that you can get pretty granular with what you can control here on who can see what in your database. Okay. And then if you want Mike to be an admin user because he's helping you do the setup, then you can click here. I don't recommend you make 5 or 6 people admin users. Try to keep it to 2 or 3. Because again, those people have the rights to come in and make changes. And if you're not really communicating with each other on what you're doing, you can kind of step on the toes of each other doing that. Okay. So I'm not going to make Mike an admin user, but I'm going to save his record now. And he will now be added to my list. Okay. So there he is. And you can see his access profile. You can see he's not an admin user. Okay. And this little green dot here indicates the person is logged in. So as the admin user, if you just wanted to check to see who's logged into your system at any point in time, you can just go to settings and users and access users and look for the green dots, and then you can see who's logged in any point in time. Okay. Now that password link thing, if you decide not to put passwords in, when you're done adding your users, you can select them all and then click on send password link. And then the system notifications will generate an email to send to all the users with a link to go and create their own password. Okay. But like I said, sometimes it doesn't get out. Sometimes it might land in the junk folder. So if you have some issues with that, you can go back in and add their password for them. Okay. But that you can do. The other thing that you can do is if you have a lot of users and you don't want to manually type them in, you can import the list. So you click here, and then here you can download an Excel file that is a template for all the information you need to import into the user record, and you can fill it out in Excel. Then when you have the file saved, you come here and click on choose file, find your file, and then click import, and it will import them. I suppose this method depends on whether you already have a list of your users that's easily put in Excel format. If you have to create it from scratch, I'm thinking maybe it's just as easy to type it directly into ClaritySoft. So again, that's up to you. You get to decide that. Okay. I'm going to skip here to access profiles for a moment. We talked about the all profile that we assigned to Mike, and we talked about the individual profile. So the profile is what allows you to see and do in the database. So by definition, the all profile lets you see all records in the database by default. Okay. This is what most people use. But once you get in here, you can make changes to the all profile. My recommendation is if you're going to make changes to change some of what's visible to folks and what they can do, is to create a custom profile. Leave this intact. This can be basically your profile as the admin user where you have all rights, everything can be done. You remain the all profile. And then you create another one for the rest of your team. So I'm going to cancel out of here, and you can see that I've got an all marketing team and all sales team. I like to prefix the name of it with the rights all. Here I've got individual real estate, so that you know, oh, this is an all profile, this is an individual profile. Okay, so if I go into my all sales team one that I created, and all you have to do is click add. Okay, and I'll just create another one. So I click add, I give it a name, and I'll just call this whatever name you want. So the first thing here is the person that's going to be assigned this profile, a salesperson. If they're a salesperson, then that data will flow into sales reports and things like that. If they're not, their name won't be included because they're not a salesperson. Lead manager means in the leads module, anybody who has this profile would be allowed to change the ownership of a lead record to another user. Well, maybe you have one person who does the assigning of the leads, and that person may have their own profile to be able to do that. So you would decide whether they can do that or not. Okay. Then you come down here and you have all your modules. So the first thing is to say, well, what modules can this set of people see? Do they need to see, maybe they don't need to see the support module because you aren't using the support module. Okay. This is a custom module I have in here. Maybe they don't need to see that. So you get to turn on or off what modules you are using in the system. Maybe you're not putting sales in ClaritySoft because they're going to your accounting system. So again, you decide what you want to see. Okay. And I'm going to turn sales off just for the heck of it so you can see the difference. And then for each of the modules, can they create a new record? Well, most likely, if you want them doing stuff in here, they should be able to create a new record. Can they edit their own record? Meaning once they create it, they can go in and make changes. Yes. Okay. Deleting is another question. Do you want a person to be able to delete accounts or contacts? Maybe not, because if you delete an account, you delete everything connected to that account. It gives you a warning, but it still will occur. You can get it back, but maybe you say, no, you can't delete, until people are used to stuff, you may turn it off. I recommend leaving activities on and leaving calendar on because they might need to, delete an appointment or something. So you can turn these things off. All right. Then, I'm going to turn that off. That's a custom module. Can they edit a shared record? That means if they're set as an individual, oops, and I forgot to change this right here. This is where you're going to make the same mistake. Oh, this is all. Right here is all. Okay. But what this means here, a shared record actually belongs to another person. And if you turn off this, then they can see the record, but they cannot edit it. They could add activities to it. They could add new opportunities, things like that, but they can't edit a record that belongs to another person. And sometimes you want that capability. So you need to think through, you know, what you want people to be able to do in the system. Okay, maybe it doesn't matter if they go in and change the address or the phone number. Maybe it does. You want the account owner to be responsible for that. Okay, and I am going to turn this off so you can see it. Okay, so you choose what they can do. Then feature access. This gives you, well, what functionality do they have, you know, the ability to do? Mass email means they can send out more than one email at a time to a group of people. You probably want them to have that. Export to Excel means they can select a group of records and export them out to Excel for, you know, whatever reason they might need it. Merge accounts and contacts. This is if you have a duplicate account in there, they can merge them together, or they can merge two contacts together. Maybe that you want them to do that, maybe not, you know. Import, I usually say no. It's best to have one or two people do importing of data, because if people don't clean up the data that they're putting in, you could end up with a mess. So controlling that is good. Group edit means you can edit more than one record at a time. This is a good feature in ClaritySoft, but it also could be a little bit dangerous. Manage products means they would be able to go to the settings and see the products and services and update the price book. Okay, maybe not. And then advanced reports are a particular type of report they would have access to. Okay. Report permission, this is for the reports module. Well, if you turned off, I turned off the sales module, so I don't really need to see sales reports. I don't need to see support and issue reports. We're not using invoices, and we're not using any of these. So there's no point in seeing reports for those if they can't do it. Then for the reports they can see, can they create their own new ones? Can they edit reports that are there? Can they delete? So you would choose, you know, maybe they can't delete, but that could get sticky if they created a report that they decide they don't want. So, but you also can lock things. All right, and then last thing is sales stage access. I haven't had a lot of people use this, but you can create in your opportunities customization different, a whole bunch of sales stages, but then you can say for the outside sales team, they can see this, 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 and this. And if you have an inside sales team, they might see a different set of sales stages. Okay, so you have some control there. So that's that. All right, and it's going to give you a warning. Okay, hello. Yeah, mouse isn't clicking right. So you can create, as I said, multiple access profiles to fit your purposes for stuff. All right. And then when the person logs in, that person will have those rights in the database and see what they're supposed to see. Now, for some reason, this is taking a while. I don't know why. I'm just going to click cancel here. Okay. All right, moving along. Per usual, I get hung up on stuff. Customization. This is where you go to add your custom fields. Okay. And you have all your modules. And so you'll click on a module name and you'll have no custom fields here when you go into a brand new database. And this is where you add them. When you add a custom field, you come over here and click add, and then you can type the name of the field. I know I have one already called territory, so I'm just call it territory list. then these are all the different custom field types that you have. All of these are described in the knowledge base. There also is a webinar on custom fields and setting them up that you can look up and get into more detail. But basically you pick the type of custom field that you want. Depending upon the level of ClaritySoft you have purchased, you may or may not see all of these fields. For example, you may not see calculated. You may not see some of these other ones. So if you don't see them, it's because of the level of ClaritySoft that you have. You need to talk to your account rep. But if I wanted to make my territory list a drop down, then I choose that, and then I can type in, Northeast, press enter. And I can type as many options as I need. So I now have my custom field. Okay. And so you can see your custom fields the names are here, and the type of field they are is listed here. All right. And then just like the lead sources, you can enable and disable fields. If you disable it, it doesn't disappear from the database. It's just not visible. So you might put something in and later decide, oh, we don't really use that field. Rather than delete it and delete all the data that's in it, you can disable it. And then if somebody down the road says, oh, that field we used to have, you can bring it back. So basically you go add your custom fields, and then you can add the same custom field of territory list in contacts, opportunities, quotes. You can start in leads and add it in all the modules. So as you move your data through the database, it will flow from module to module. Okay. So there are some preferences you can set for your accounts. ClaritySoft does have the ability to create an account number for you within ClaritySoft. If you want it, it's hidden underneath, and you just have to add it to your user interface template. If you want, again, I don't know a whole lot of people that use this. These two things we don't really need to talk about because I know you don't see that one, but you just move your way down and go to your custom fields and add them in. Okay. Once you add a custom field, your next step is you must put it in the user interface template. And that's right here. When you click on this on the right, you will have all your user interface templates for all the modules. So I added that to accounts. And then the next step here is you must choose what profile. Okay. So all of your custom profiles will show up here. Well, I'm going to go to the all profile because that's kind of my standard. There is a base template too that you can go to. And I'm going to set it up in my all profile because that's really for me as the admin user. So here's territory list. I'm just going to bring this over here, and I can drag over whatever fields I want. These are a lot of fields. I have a bunch of crazy stuff in my demo database, but you can move all these fields around. Okay. And I'm just going to move some of these away. Anything can go anywhere, and you get everything set up the way you want on your screen layout. Then another thing that we have up here is column customization. One of the questions a lot of people will ask when we're doing implementations, when you go into the list view in your modules, you have different columns, data columns that you can set, and it's an individual setting. So each user can set up the columns that person wants to see, and they can be changed at any time. Well, sometimes when people, especially again in a larger company with more users, they would like to set those columns up by default to start with. and then people can change them. So we added this where you can go to column customization. You can say, these are the things I want that person to see. And maybe I just created that territory list. I want to bring it over so they can see what territory they're in. And you can set up the order of the columns by moving things over. And then you come over here and you say, well, what do I want to sort by? Usually the account name makes the most sense, ascending order. And then you get to set the number of records per page. It defaults to 20. Again, I recommend 100 just because you get to see more scrolling up and down. Once you've set all this, you click apply columns to users. Okay. Now, if you want to lock this because you don't want people to be able to change the columns, you can lock it. I don't necessarily recommend that because I think you'll drive your users crazy where they can't change it, but it sort of depends on the number of custom fields. If all your custom fields fit in the columns, then okay, why not? If they don't, then I think you would frustrate them. So once you've got all that set up, you can save your UI template. Then you would need to log out and log back in, okay? So you go to your different modules after you've set up your custom fields, go to the UI template, go down and set up. Oh, I know what else I wanted to show you. I forgot. I set this for the all access profile. I want this same layout for all my other access profiles that I'm using. So rather than having to go to a different access profile and make the changes, I can do just a copy to, and then I can say, take this one, copy it to my marketing team, my sales team, my outside sales. I can copy it to all the other profiles that I'm using and then click save. So the same layout is now copied to those other modules. And you can see when I switch the profile, there's no change in the screen because I copied it. So remember that one too. That saves you a lot of time. All right. And then I would need to log out and log back in. All right. The same thing in the contact UI template, you have the column customization. You also have subtab. If I go here real quick, you see these titles here. This is now controllable in the user interface template as well as here. Okay. So this, if you aren't aware of this, you can now control the subtab columns, which is nice. So that's there. And then you can also go to the contact UI template and it has a subtab columns and you can set up a default set there. All right. So explore that. Then let me see. I want to go back in here real fast. The last thing to talk about is for your users, this My Settings, okay? For your users, first of all, they have My Preferences, which would be to set their own time zone. If it's not already there, set the date. What module do they want to land in when they log into ClaritySoft? You can go directly to any module wherever you want to work. Like you might want to go directly to opportunities. You might want to go directly to activities to see your to-do list. Each person has control of that. The board view we haven't talked about, so we're not going to worry about. The contact sync. Record conversion. This is when you're converting an opportunity to create a quote. Do you want the system to automatically open the quote record without you then having to go to quotes, find it, and open it? I like that feature. Lead conversion opportunity. When you convert a lead, do you want the little checkbox that says create an opportunity automatically checked? Yes. Okay. So that's an option for the person. And then your products and services, you can show it as a separate tab, which is the way almost everybody uses it, or you can show it at the bottom of your details screen. So that kind of, you could experiment with that one. And then the item sort, how are you sorting? Most people just go by the item number. So this was done for one particular customer we have, okay? And then you click apply, log out, log back in, and those are there. But your users will need to go down over here and put in my information, which is their basic information, save it. It will then go into quotes and other places. Export options, they can set up what fields they want to be able to export using the Excel. Navigation menu, they can change the order of the modules that they can see to the order they want to see them. So that's their color schemes. You can change your color schemes. And this is where you go to change your password. So you would type in your current password, and then you type in your new password following the rules that are down here. So you can see that the rules show up and they have to follow the new rules if you set them. And then they click change, log out, log in with the new password. So if you send them a generic password, as soon as they log in, they can go to settings, change password, and reset it to what they want. Okay. Audit log is useful for you as an admin user, but it can also be useful for the normal user, where you can say, okay, what have I done today in ClaritySoft? These are all the things I've just been doing during this session, okay, plus anything else I've done today in here. And you can undo some stuff if you make a mistake. If you're not sure about that, call tech support. They will help you. Other important things up here, email settings. As the admin user, I did jump over this down here. You have access to every person's email settings. So you can select a person and put in whatever their outgoing email is. This one is set to Yahoo. This is not set. So you can go in and set up your email settings, make sure they work. So once you put all this in, this would be your outgoing settings for Outlook or Gmail or whatever you use. You type in everything, click apply to save it, and then you do a save and test, and it'll either say it failed or it'll say you're successful. If you fail, then you got to figure out, you know, what it doesn't like. Many times it's your email password isn't right, or something right in here isn't right. You might have to talk to your IT person to figure that out, because you might have a Exchange server domain that you need to put in here. So, and again, if you get stuck on that, then you can, you know, call our tech support team and they will help. So this will allow your users to send emails out of ClaritySoft. Email signature, you can add your email signatures in here. And then when you send an email out, if this is set to the default signature, this will show up automatically in the email when you send it out. So you can create that in here. And then email templates, you can create email templates and save them that are standard kind of templates to send out, you know. And again, as a team, you probably want to talk about these and figure out what you want. And word them, and you can pull in merge fields. So these are all individualized when you go to send them out. All right. Okay, I've gone past my hour again. Daggone, I try to shorten this down every single time and I never make it. So hopefully I've given you enough to go on, maybe answered some questions that you had on settings. Mostly with settings, the thing to remember, if you go in and make a change, log out and log back in, and have your whole team do that. So that the changes are reflected. Once you have your settings all done, so to speak, then you just log into ClaritySoft and you're off on your merry way for the day. But when you're doing the setup, you will be doing a lot of logging out and a lot of logging in, but that's okay. For testing purposes, which is nice with ClaritySoft Live, if you set a person to be an individual user, I can log in as that user. If I assign the password, that's why it's kind of nice to assign a password at first. So you can use the login, and then you can test it. So Jim Smith is set as an individual. Okay. So when we come in, we see only his records. He has 30. I changed the color scheme for him just so I would know the difference. If I set things up where he has a different access profile, he can see different data fields in it. Okay. So you can test all that to see. You have a lot of control on what people can see. For example, a manager might be able to see different fields than a sales rep or someone else at a different level. And, maybe there's some financial data that you want the managers to see, but not anyone else to see. So you can control all of that using those access profiles and creating different user interface templates for the access profiles. So, I think we have reached the end of our time for sure. And I hopefully covered enough to get you going. So thank you for attending today. We had a nice sized group listening today, and hopefully we got you some good ideas, some thoughts, maybe some changes you want to make to your system. If you need help, call tech support at 888-838-7487 extension 2, or email them at support@claritysoft.com, and they'll be happy to help you with any questions you have. Or go back to your implementation person if you're in Quick Start and say, I want to try this or that. And then if you have any critiques, ideas for future topics, please email us at info@claritysoft.com. And with that, I will let you go and have a good rest of the day. Thank you for coming.